And we're back. I'm your host, BKP. Good morning from beautiful Blue Jeans Pizza, Blue Ridge, Georgia. How are you, Dr. Whaley?
I'm great.
Good to see you this morning. I love October. Beautiful time of the year up here in North Georgia. Just really enjoyable.
Yeah, we had to get out of the Sycamore Crossing, and I know we could have done another day, but it could have. I know they predicted a hurricane force is coming tomorrow, so we're in the right spot. Hey, you see the biscuits he was handing out a minute ago?
Wait a minute.
You didn't get a biscuit. You were talking on the phone.
What happened over there?
All right, that's okay.
Is that a biscuit you have?
Yeah. Anyway.
Oh, the only thing I got is the message: "Don't touch the coffee maker." But everybody else gets biscuits.
He gets a biscuit. Yeah, I just thought you were,
How you doing, Dr. Whaley?
I'm doing good. I had a couple statements immediately.
Okay.
You asked about what Jane Whaley's going to do, and you'll notice I have a Dr. Pepper and not a tab this morning.
Okay, I'm waiting.
My grandchildren, this is some kind of a school break in Atlanta, so I've got the grandkids for 4 days. And Jane Whaley is at home with the grandkids, and they bought Dr. Pepper's last night, and in honor of my grandchildren, I brought a Dr. Pepper today. So this is for my grandchildren, and I'm wearing the shirt, so I'm answering your question. Jane Whaley is challenging the decision of the City Council's voting representative, or whatever she calls it. Election supervisor, yeah. So that's the end of that. I can't comment anymore. But Jane Whaley is she's home with her grandkids this morning, and she's challenging. So there's
two things that's okay. Jane is fine, and you're fine being you brought a diet Dr.
This will
Pepper.
probably be the last one I'll have until they're up here next time.
We'll be back
to a tab, yeah.
Anything else opening this? Anything going on?
Well, yes, I did want to mention something that I thought was kind of important. As always, I like to focus on our other features that you've got. I got nothing to talk about football. You were there last night, but you've got the pet of the week every week. And we've always, I hate to say criticized, but I have a friend that's an executive with one of these big national pet chains. There is an epidemic of what is known as Campylobacter infection in human beings that's now up to 80 or 90 cases. The two biggest states are California and Florida, but there are cases in many other states where people have purchased puppies from pet stores, pet mills, that are infected with the organism Campylobacter jejuni fetus. Now that hit my... Wait a minute. Can you say that twice? One more time. I can, because the first case of Campylobacter infection in a human being's bloodstream was treated by Dr. Stephen Marlowe, who I've talked about before, and you've met. He's my infectious disease man in Atlanta who retired, now plays golf up here with us, and he owns a place out at the Toccoa Riverside, and Dr. William Whaley. So the first case of this in the bloodstream of a human being was about 35 years ago. Now, it's not because we're so smart, it's because CDC's in Atlanta, and this guy was sick with something, we had no idea what it was. The CDC came out and diagnosed it. But this is an organism that is in dogs. People catch it from contamination with dog litter. But it's a serious illness because it's not something real common. It's not like Shigella and common bacterial infections you get from food, and it can be missed. And it's another example, and we're going to come to one of the questions in a minute, where there is a vector for disease that you can avoid by going to the Humane Society or the Pet Rescue and getting you a real dog, and not getting a breeded thing that came out of a puppy mill. And that's the puppy mill dogs, are not terribly healthy. The puppy dog mills can spread disease, and I'm just plugging your pet of the week. So that's
I do appreciate that, because I do know the Humane Society of Blue Ridge, and there's so many others out there that have a program, but especially I know very well the Humane Society of Blue Ridge has an intake. It has an intake process that they go through before the dogs are even available for adoption. So I agree with that wholeheartedly.
So anyway, we can get to the questions now.
Anything political? Anything else? I mean,
I'm sticking to local politics. Local politics is Jane Whaley's fighting it, and I'm going to stop right there.
Well, I didn't know if there's any national politics going on.
Nope, I'm sticking. No, I do. I love the Secretary of State. I love the Secretary of State. And my nurse's son, who's in the Secret Service, I think he's now guarding Pence, but he's guarded Tillerson before. My nurse's son, who's in the Secret Service.
Well,
I like the guy.
Obviously, some people are trying to do everything to separate him and the president. So
well, they did, but they don't. Not to everybody. I mean, they separated Tom Price. They separated the Attorney General. If they could separate Melania, they'd find some way to do it. But she didn't. He ain't separating from that, I'll tell you.
We're going to get to the questions.
All right,
now.
go ahead.
Okay. Sam's shaking her head. Let's go to the questions. Folks, we want to thank the Georgia Cancer Specialist for this segment every week. And if you have a question throughout the week that you would like to ask Dr. Whaley, you can send that to chief@fetchernews.com, or really simple info. Send it to info@fetchernews.com and put up in the heading, Ask the Doc, and we'll get that question to Dr. Whaley. It's every week, it seems to me like I'm getting these questions that am I really asking these questions? I am. I'm like, okay, where are these coming from? So I'm going to ask it just out. It's on my computer. I do not set these questions up, folks. I'm considering having my ears stapled to help me lose weight. Does that work? Is that a real question, Dr. Whaley?
Yes, it is a real question.
What? Oh my!
I know it.
I mean,
we're old. Okay. First of all, the one-word answer is no. It doesn't work. But it opens up a discussion that touches on a lot of really important things. First of all, what the proponents of this ear stapling are trying to do, and they're trying to do it for a profit motive, is they're trying to capitalize off or trying to steal the little bit of science that's real around acupuncture.
Okay.
Now, we've discussed acupuncture before, and in 1968, when I was in the leper colony in Taiwan, I watched a thyroidectomy done under acupuncture anesthesia. So I can tell you I have watched acupuncture done, and anesthesia for a thyroidectomy worked. Now, in acupuncture, this goes back hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of years. The needles are sterile. They're extremely thin, almost like a hair. They're placed just a very small degree below the skin in exact spots. They're left in place for a minute, 2 minutes, and they're removed, and everything's sterile and sterile. You don't have sterile and sterile when you start the puncturing. Now, ear piercing, we're going to talk about piercings now. Ear piercings go back thousands of years. And there's not a person in this room that doesn't have a friend whose earlobe has been cut and they have a little flapping earlobe there because they were wearing a earring that was too heavy, and over time it just worked its way out, or they were swimming or playing in a sport that got snatched out. So ear piercings aren't without problems as well, and Sam has a picture. I'm not trying to scare everybody, but I had a couple of calls last week that people liked seeing those visuals. So this is a visual that Sam will put up of what's called a keloid in a normal person who went and got their ear pierced. And what I'm saying, so ear piercing is so common for earrings that I even think that the mama, before you let your child or an adult woman or a late adolescent woman who's going to go get her ears pierced, you need to stop and ask first in the family history, are people in our family who have had difficulty with scarring or keloid formation. Sam, you got that picture up? Okay, this is a keloid that you can see. It's about the size of a golf ball, occurred within about 90 days. Then that grew up to about a year after this piercing, and the earring is long gone. But the scarring thing is cosmetically difficult. It's not easy. So, well, just cut it out. Well, if you cut it out, you get a bigger keloid. So the piercings of the ear should be done by reputable people. You know, you go to Saks Fifth Avenue, you go to Tiffany's or somewhere, and they're dog careful that they're going to give you a sterile ear place. And if you do it at around the corner and let your friend do it with an ice cube and an ice cube and an ice pick or a sewing needle, you're making a mistake. Outside of piercing of the ears, the scientific community says don't pierce it if it's somewhere else. We know many, many girls who have jewelry in their belly button. Hugh Hefner, who just died, is the one who actually popularized that, and it was first shown in Playboy magazine. I know of patients that have died from the infection that has occurred from piercing of the belly button. It's not a real clean place. It's not terribly safe. You're digging a hole in the body, and as you well know, if you stick a splinter in here, God picks a splinter out, so it's a foreign body. So the belly buttons are the next most common. There are places of the unmentionable under your underwear, places that get pierced, and those lead to infections and scarring and all sorts of stuff. And then the tongue piercings that you've seen are extremely unsafe. And you can have a tongue stud in for 10 years and not have any difficulty, and then if you had some sort of food contaminant like Campylobacter, it's got itself a hole right into your body. Just don't do it. So starting out, the staple doesn't do a thing for obesity. There's been very well studied. The staple is got a ton of hazard to it. It opens up the discussion of piercing. Piercing of the ears has been proven to be safe, but it needs to be done by somebody who's experienced in it, not by your roommate or anything. And you've got to have a high quality earring, or you can develop an allergy to tin or whatever's in a poor one. Is that enough?
Yeah.
And don't pierce your tongue.
I don't plan to.
Okay, good. I didn't want you to.
But I will say this, you know, I want to thank you very much, because
you thought that was a crazy question, didn't
you? Yeah,
you?
but it turned out to be, I mean, turned out to be something very...
And the acupuncture thing, I'll go back to that in a minute. Jane Whaley went for acupuncture for a while. There was a very well-known, established physician acupuncturist in this community who no longer is here. There is documentation that acupuncture at least is better than placebo in certain types of conditions, mostly orthopedic, soft tissue, muscle sort of things. And I don't mean to impugn the acupuncture when I am impugning the piercings. There.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Our next question. Again, well, you always give me a yes, no, and then explain it, so I'll just go with the question. Is it okay to exercise if I have a cold?
That's a great question, because it opens up the definition of a cold to start with. It opens up what do you mean by exercise as the second. And the consensus is that if you have what is generally known as a cold, and it is in the neck and above, nothing in the chest and below. So let's stick to nasal congestion, sneezing, no fever. You don't have any acute pain in your sinuses. Then it's safe to exercise, but not at the rate that I used to run, as you know, 40 miles a week and did it for 40 years. Not at the high level that you usually do. So if you are an exerciser who runs and you've got a head cold without fever, you should cut down the length of your exercise. So just using me, it used to take me an hour to run 8 miles. It'd be okay for me to take a 45-minute walk. So the exercise would be shorter in duration and less in intensity. And there is a hazard to doing it at the level that you did before, or if you have a fever, you can actually harm yourself. So we recommend, if you're sick and you feel terrible, don't go out and do it. And if it's associated with flu symptoms like muscle aches and pains, don't do it. But if it's simply a head cold, you don't have any significant fever, and you're sneezing and stuff, the exercise might help you actually open up your sinuses. Now, if it's below the neck and there's any component of coughing, chest discomfort, or anything, no exercise. Because with influenza or any kind of inflammatory reaction in the lung, the exercise can make it worse. You can get pneumonia. You can end up in the hospital. Is that enough, or you want to go a little farther?
No,
I think it answers the question.
I will say this: when I get the question, I look at them, I'm like, okay, and then I like that.
All right.
Here's the one that I've been waiting to hear the answer on this one. Is it okay to get a flu shot if I'm pregnant, or if someone else is pregnant? Or if you're pregnant, should you get a flu shot? How do you get that? All right, okay.
All right. Now, I've done this flu shot thing a whole bunch of times, and the recommendation is every single solitary person in America, absent an allergy to eggs or absent some very, very rare neurological condition, needs a flu shot, and the pregnant women need it worse than almost anybody except the diabetics and the chronic lungers, because influenza has a much higher fatality rate and serious outcome rate in pregnant women. Now remember, real flu, break-bone flu, is a 7 to 14-day illness. It's not this cold we were talking about. It's associated with fevers that are generally above 101 and can be as high as 105, and is associated with significant muscle aches and pains. Well, that's hard on the woman. The pregnancy lowers their ability to fight infection within the lung. Breathing capacity is less because of the abdominal contents making the diaphragmatic excursion lower, and therefore they have a much higher complication with pneumonia. But more importantly, when a woman runs a fever, her fetus is subjected to neural tube. That means spina bifida, or things in the brain and spine defects. So if you got the flu during the particularly vulnerable period where your baby was being developed in the central nervous system, you could have an adverse outcome. There's a great example of what I mean about exposure during the vulnerable period, and that goes back to when you were a boy. And thalidomide was used by women as a sleeping tablet because it was thought to be safer than Nimbutal, Seconal, and the barbiturates. And then there was an epidemic beginning in England, but all over the world, of kids born with no arms and no legs, called phycomelia. Well, that thalidomide had to be taken in a very thin period of the 9-month pregnancy, but if it was taken in that period, it was extremely likely your kid was going to be born with no hands, no feet, no arms, no legs. So this business about the fever from a flu, it has to occur at a certain envelope in the development of the child, but if you have a high fever at that point, then you can end up with a baby with spina bifida or a small brain or poor intellect. So the pregnant women, not only is it safe, they got to get a flu shot. Second, that brings up, that'll be third, brings up when should a woman that's pregnant versus Sam get into the doctor's office when she feels puny and is a little bit ill. Well, when I said that about the fever with the flu, anything that causes a fever of 101 or high 100 point, not 100.1, but 100.5 or 101 in a pregnant woman, first of all, she needs to gobble the Tylenol, because remember, she shouldn't take aspirin or the generic Tylenol. And she needs to go find out why she's sick. Her sister, who's teaching school, ought to take the Tylenol and go to work, but the pregnant woman needs to go get help.
All right, so now...
Now, you should take a flu shot too, and so should Sam, and everybody else needs a flu shot. You were going to get that, didn't you? Yeah.
Yeah, I knew it.
All of us should take a flu shot. 38,000 people are going to die of the influenza this year. I got to ask you a question.
Okay, go ahead.
I want you to imagine that you're UPS or your General Motors, and you've got to have that guy in that truck delivering those packages, and if he just calls in this morning sick, it's like Sam calling in sick. We'd be dead. So if you have
she does do a pretty good job.
She does it.
We'll give her that, okay?
All right. If she had epileptic spell and fell out right now, you not have to just go home. So what I'm saying is, if you've got a big organization,
Rose, check on Sam. I'm a little nervous. Go ahead.
A big organization that depends upon these bodies there doing the work, why do they bring a nurse into the company and give flu shots to everybody for free? It's because when there's an epidemic of influenza in a machine of people, military or anything else, and you lose a substantial portion of them, 3%, 5%, 10% for a 2 to 4 week period from an epidemic, it can cripple the industry. And you have watched professional athletic teams not be able to play because of a flu epidemic. So even healthy people that get flu are brought out of work. You know, nobody that's healthy can go to work with a temperature of 105 and feeling like they've been beat up with a 2x4. So healthy people like you need to take it so you can stay at work and not infect other people. You're around, you're out every day with the public. So you're going to interview 75, 80-year-old people today. You're going to interview people with cancer. You're going to interview children. You're going to interview handicapped. You're going to interview a bunch of athletes. But you could be a vector of disease. You're just like an infected mosquito carrying Zika virus if you don't get immunized against the flu. That makes you feel bad, doesn't it?
Well, I don't know. I'm gonna say right here on the camera with everybody out there, with you sitting here, I've never taken a flu shot.
But that doesn't. But you wear your seatbelt every time you drive.
Yes, I do.
And you haven't had a bad accident that blew up the airbag and needed that seatbelt to save your life. So that's the dumbest way of putting it I've ever heard. That's not a smart way to say I've never had a flu shot and I've dodged the bullet every time. How many times has a drunk driver been driving impaired when he's been caught? Sam, what's the number? When somebody has a DUI and they say it's the first time I've ever driven, statistically, how many times have they driven impaired? Pull it out. Just guess what? Guess. 50? 150 to 300. So when somebody says, it's the first time, I just had 2 beers, they have driven greater than 100, 150 times impaired. So you have dodged the flu epidemic without the flu shot for decades, but that doesn't mean it's going to happen in 2017 and 18.
I don't know. Okay. All right, I can take, okay. Well, at least I told you the truth. Yes. I got to tell my doctor the truth.
Well, yeah,
right?
you tell Ray now. On the 18th, a couple of weeks from now, Ray will be back here. You tell him.
What would Ray say?
Ray'd say, get your flu shot.
Ray say, get your flu shot. And so does Dr. Whaley. Folks, I want to make sure that you understand I'm not telling you not to get a flu shot. I don't want that to be something that's misunderstood here on the show. I support what Dr. Whaley. All right, I'm going to get one. Done deal, okay?
Good. All right, good.
It's a done deal. I'm going to get a flu shot. Oh, don't get me started. I got to get Jane over here. Jane,
she's got the grandkids, which is why I have my Dr. Pepper instead of my tab.
Anything on your notes today? Anything we didn't go over? Because you're always looking into things, some of the latest medical research that's out and stuff like that. So anything today before we close?
Yeah, I try to get things that are going to help the community. One, people are so worried about autism in their kids, and people just aren't compliant, like the flu shot thing. There was this study came out of Sweden, and it came out this week. And when you talk about studies that have 6 patients or 100 patients, you're not convinced. This study was 250,000 children born of mothers who took their prenatal vitamins appropriately versus 250,000 women who didn't take prenatal vitamins, kids whose mothers did not take 2 prenatal vitamins. That's 500,000 kids. That's a pretty good sample. Autism was 30% less common in the mothers who took the vitamins. Now, there's no causal relationship they're able to come up with, but it's an observation that says, go on and buy and take the prenatal vitamin if you're pregnant. You like that one?
Yes.
Do you like the one that says obesity is associated with 13 kinds of cancer?
No.
Okay, well, we'll come into that one another week.
Okay, we will. I'm your host, BKP. It is 8:44 Friday morning. We're at Blue Jeans Pizza in Blue Ridge, Georgia. Beautiful October morning here in North Georgia. Come up and visit us this weekend. Take a trip up. Apples, leaves, pumpkins, you name it, and beautiful fall weather. Bring the sweatshirt. You'll enjoy it walking all around the streets.
And high school football tonight.
High school football, exactly. Let's get ready to high school football tonight.
Friday night lights.
Friday night lights, can't beat it. Thank you, Georgia Cancer Specialist, every Friday morning. Thank you, Dr. Whaley. And enjoy the grandkids this weekend.
I hope to.
All right. We'll be right back. I noticed Rick made his way in, so we'll get Rick in here in a minute if he can finish his biscuit. Somehow everybody here is walking around. Rose, you got a biscuit? Rose has a biscuit. Okay, folks, I'll have to check into this after this. We're at Blue Jeans Pizza. I want to thank Ken. I have to check into this during the commercial. We'll be right back. Stay with us.